Hey, Brooke, how's it going?
Conrad, what's shaking? You playing golf? You
Oh,
look like you're dressed like you just got off the links. Does your wife get upset when you like walk in with your golf spikes in the house? Like,
yeah. No, because I always knock him off properly before I walk in the house, like any true gentleman does before he comes in off the course. No golf today. I try to save that for Sundays, then I don't feel like I'm missing too many meetings or anything like that. Didn't this past weekend, but hoping to this weekend. Hopefully the weather will cooperate and things will work well. It's fall here. I know these come out a little bit later. It might be winter by the time you're listening, but it's fall here and perfect time to play. Pants, but no jacket needed. But this is absolutely for sure my golf shirt. The reason or sweater, I should say, the reason I'm wearing it is it's freezing in this house right now. My wife just keeps clicking down the AC. She has seemingly an infinite desire for being cold at home for some reason.
this would be perfect time to head out to like Scottsdale, Arizona. I think. Which,
Mhm.
hey, that's a good segue.
Yeah, Scottsdale. Steve, welcome. We're excited to have you here. Yeah, there's a lot to go into, but and we were joking before we hit record. So if we're laughing as we get started here, it's because you missed the pre-show before we had the red light blinking. But Steve, I suspect the listener may already know about you or know about Casago and things like that. But if you wouldn't mind, maybe someone who's new to the space hasn't heard about you before, would you mind maybe the brief summary of you and your role at Casago?
Yeah, sure. So, came out of the military as an Army Ranger. Did a little bit of college. Graduated. Went down to Mexico for the summer, hanging out, and helped a gentleman who needed some help crawling up on a roof and working on some AC work. Uh, did some maintenance tech work for him, and within 7 months, I ended up owning the business. Uh, got started, at a very small local property management, beach home company there in Rocky Point, Mexico, and it's pretty much been my only adult job since then. So, been able to grow it out. Got involved with Streamline with Carlos, and we that's a whole different saga, but that's gone pretty well. And then continued on to start going to different markets. And we'll be talking about some of the mistakes I made going to those different markets. And at some point, started to realize that the quality of the product was going down, in relation to our service, because I was just starting to overreach. And thought that the only way to make that work was to find people who were incentivized by their own ownership. So converted the brand into a franchise brand, and off we went. We're in 77 markets now.
I don't know. Can you share some, if you're able to, can you share some rough sense of number of properties in those 77 markets?
Yeah, uh, depending on if you count including our, not just full service, but also our, our secondary services, sitting around 6,000 properties.
Yeah, exactly. I think the listener who, if they haven't been exposed to the brand before, they may not realize quite how large you guys are. So I think there's, something that people can learn from that. And you've seen, and now you're like working with other people who are kind of building up their own businesses under the umbrella. So I think there's a lot there to go into for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Really, at the end of the day, that when people talk about the size of their property management company, that's not what people should be thinking about. It's what's what value are you giving to your clients, to your homeowners and guests, and what's your brand promise? Are you living up to that? And what's your profitability? When it comes to being able to operate, you can grow to quite a large company and still not be profitable if you don't run it properly, right? So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a
That's
couple
that's
examples out there, I'm sure.
yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, Brooke, I'm originally, curious, how did you originally connect with Steve? What was the way that you guys got connected?
Yeah. So, well, first off, I think starting as a maintenance person is always the direct path of most people how they end up buying a management company, right? And that's
Yeah.
how most companies get started. Yeah. No. So you know what? I was introduced to Steve through a mutual friend, CJ Stam. So I was unfortunate I couldn't go to Durham one year, and I was in Atlanta, and I think CJ came back from it and he called me. He's like, Brooke, you got to meet this guy. I just met the most incredible person. I'm telling you, he's like just such a cool dude. He's so just humble and just willing to help out, and former Army Ranger, and just he's got this great company called Casago, and he's like, you got to meet him. So he ended up introducing us, and that was, gosh, what, Steve, 5 years ago, I think, and
Yeah.
we've been good friends ever since. So it's I was upset I didn't go to that Darm, but I'm glad that CJ introduced us in the end.
Right on. Awesome. Well, Steve, like we kind of shared before we hit record, basically the premise is we're going to go through some of the mistakes that you wrote for the book. I think there's a lot more context and information I suspect that you can layer in that may help the listener or reader get a little bit more out of it. So if you're comfortable and you're cool, we will dive right in. Number
Yeah.
one that you had listed in the book was today's competition is key to tomorrow's growth. And you made some comments underneath that about, understanding and befriending competitors, which, some people will keep competitors at arm's length. What's kind of your current approach to that? How do you think about that now, given that you guys are collectively in many markets with the companies that you work with? How do we approach that the right way?
Yeah, I think I started off originally thinking of my competitors as somebody who I should be, somewhat, create friction with and, compete in a level that's not friendly. And, at the end of the day, what I found was that was holding me back. Being friendly with your competitors, helping them out, getting to know them, it's a fantastic way to grow. At the end of the day, everybody exits the business one time, they find themselves in trouble. If you can build trust and relationships and goodwill with your competitors, one, they're not going to come after you so hard, or at least they shouldn't. Number two, when it's time for them to exit or they need help, they're going to reach out to you. And that's exactly what's happened to me in the beginning. With people, because I was, so competitive with people that I wasn't building trust with my competitors. And so when there was opportunities, there was no way they were coming to me because we were always at odds with each other. So going out, building these relationships, making sure that, that you actually give them real value and you're there to truly help them. Now, you don't have to give them the secret recipe, right? But the truth is, even if they have the recipe, it doesn't mean they can bake the cake. But giving authentic help and building trust with them is just the right way to, one, lead your life, but also to, when opportunities come available or collaboration needs to happen, or they need to pass on a deal to bring it to you, or they're ready to retire or sell, if they trust you, you're going to be the first one they reach out to.
Yeah. Steve, I made the same mistake, and I put this on my list too. That I didn't reach out to our competitors, and it was so weird. It was and I've seen it in so many other markets where that's the case. And we even have some, Vintory partners that are in the same market. And it's amazing how jealous they get of other partners. I mean, I made a post on one person's LinkedIn where they had a property. And one of the other people that was in that market was screaming at our account manager, because obviously I have a personal relationship with that person. How dare I, comment on his LinkedIn post? I mean, this is what it's come to. So, but I made the same mistake when I had Vantage, and I didn't do it either. And I learned my lesson from that with Vintory. And, as all these little companies started sprouting out and starting kind of, competing against us, there was a guy, they ended up it became a great thing for me. So look at JJ King. JJ King started a company called VRM Leads. And I saw him come out. And I was like, oh my God, look what he's doing. He's going to kill us, So, but what did I do? I reached out to him. I befriended him. We ended up talking for 6 months. He finally called me one Saturday afternoon. He goes, Brooke, do you think there's any chance you would buy me? And what he was doing is although he got traction, he was still small. And he realized he was working 80 hours a week and he was making less than what he would have probably made at McDonald's. So we got him on, acquired him. It was really an acqui-hire, and he was incredible. I mean, he was absolutely killing us. One of the smartest guys on the team, developed so much of our product. Now, unfortunately, on the side, he ended up starting a little management company, and now it's up to 500 properties under management. So we lost him, but we had we look back on our product, and there's JJ's fingerprints all over it. But that would have never happened if I didn't reach out to him. And then the second example, there's a gentleman named Wes Walker. Wes started a competing company called Proper Sum. It wasn't totally competing, but it was solving the same problem, but it went at a different way. And I saw it and I was like, oh no, this thing is pretty good. I looked at the product and I said, I got to reach out to this kid. And literally we ended up talking. We became friends over the last 5 years. And then finally he came to me over the last year, and the exact same thing happened. He goes, Brooke, think there's a chance that we can, I can join the team. And now he's head of product, and he's just absolutely crushing it. But neither of those things would have happened had I not reached out to my competitor.
Yeah, it's really about a mindset, having that mindset of abundance, that there's enough to go around, and you don't have to, challenge somebody or go after them because you're a competitor, and keeping away from that mindset of scarcity. And when you do that, it's amazing what you attract, right? Because you're attracting that abundance back to you over time.
Now, it doesn't always happen. It doesn't work 100% of the time. But, if people are like-minded and have that same mindset that you just talked about, Steve, then yes, it does work.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll skip it over to number 2 then, Steve, just kind of go into some more detail about, I guess, contracts and legal agreements. Number 2, specifically from the book, was a verbal contract won't hold its weight. At the end of the day, we can, say what we want to say, right? Trusting in humanity is good, you mentioned in your paragraph underneath, but a well-written contract is essential. What's kind of your current approach, if you will, to new relationships? How do we make sure we get the right paperwork in place?
Yeah, just that. When I wrote some of my first contracts, speaking specifically to my homeowners, I was forewarned, like, hey, this is pretty loose, and there's a lot. You got a lot of gaps in here, and my reply to that was, if I'm good to my homeowners, they'll be good to me. And for the most part, that's true. For the 80-90% of the world, that's absolutely the case. Your goodwill will return that goodwill back. But that last 10 to 15 to 20% can take you down as a business, right? And so making sure that, negotiate in goodwill, but get the lawyers to fill in everything and make sure it's airtight and clear, and nothing in a contract should be left to chance or goodwill or faith. You negotiate on those behalfs. You make sure it reflects those items and the spirit of the deal. But make sure to tie that up tight is incredibly important when it comes to operating a business at scale.
Yeah, this came up a couple times. I think, Steve Trover talked out and said everything needs to be in a contract and not done with a handshake. As he adds, the few times I let it come back and bite me, get it in writing. And then Lino Maldonado of Scenic Stays said, if it isn't in writing, it's not part of the deal. Document everything! Exclamation point.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things too, Steve, right? When you have 5 homeowner relationships, you might get lucky and get that 80% reasonable person 5 times in a row. And then you get 2 or 3 in a row of the bad, people who are trying to take advantage, or, they're just not fair or reasonable with what your request is. And then, it drives you a little bit batty for sure. I've been in that boat.
It's a numbers game. At some point, you're running enough people through, our homeowners are a slice of America, a slice of humanity. Within humanity, there's people who just won't live up to the deal, or will try to misinterpret it to their own behalf. And also, in truth, sometimes people just don't remember. I've had to go back and look at what I said. It's like, no, that's not the deal. Like, no, let's go back and look. And sure enough, we went back and looked. It was like, and I misremembered. So making sure that you have that documentation, those good fences make good neighbors, right? Making sure that the boundaries are set clearly, not only for them, but for yourself as well.
Yeah. It's so funny you said that. I've forgotten many times. And if you at least even just have it in an email document, just like confirming what we just discussed, because I'm getting a little older, I'm getting a little bit more forgetful. At least I have that, paper trail.
Yeah. This sounds silly. When we do an onboarding now, Steve, we take the scope of work straight out of the proposal and we put it into one of the last slides before we actually begin, the project work with the client. And it's so tedious to read this stuff off. But what it's caught many times recently is like someone saying, "Oh no, that's not what I thought." And it's like, well, I'm really glad we did this on literally the very first interaction basically that we had together, because now we can just get it out correct quickly. And usually it's a small little pivot and then we're off to the races. But otherwise we would have quite literally started off on the wrong foot. So that's what
foundational expectations at the beginning can literally they multiply themselves on the frustration level the further down the road you go and the more investment everybody has.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. Awesome. Well, we'll kick it over to number 3 then. I think we've touched about homeowner so far a little bit, but I think we'll dive a little bit deeper here. Homeowner selection will determine your success and happiness. I think that's such a great way to describe it, because this topic's come up time and time again on the show, but I think that description is the best one I've heard so far. So how do you pick the right homeowners at a high level, and maybe go into some specifics there?
Well, there's three individuals in your life that will decide your happiness that you can choose. It's your homeowners, it's your partner, and it's your pets. And all 3 of those will create all sorts of havoc if you pick them wrong, and you have control of all 3. So super important. At the end of the day, making sure that you're aligned on your values with them, expectations. They understand your business model, and just going back to what you talked about just a minute ago. Are the expectations clear and concise, and there's no miscommunications, early in the relationship. I can tell you that often, we've lost a homeowner because we wouldn't budge, or because they asked for something outside of our normal, scope of work, or, they had an expectation that we just couldn't meet. But, the amount of misery on the back end was avoided dramatically by us, by making sure that relationship is built, well at the front end. So, incredibly important. And making sure that they have the same goals as you do, and that you understand what's important to them and they understand what's important to you. We put out a little book called The Ultimate Success Guide to Property Management. And it's actually really just a book on what the expectations are for Casago from the homeowner, what's the expectations of the homeowner from us, and then what should we both be expecting from the guests. It's purely a book on expectations. We're just rewriting it. It's going to be it's about 80 pages now. So it's more like a booklet. We send that to every single homeowner with a personal note to them to say, hey, here's what you should be expecting from us. And that really helps reduce churn, because the truth is, if you can find the right homeowners with the right properties, and the right expectations, your profitability goes up. And that's something that Brooke does really well, looking for that inventory to grow.
Steve, I know you have a clause in your contract called the no jerk policy. Mm-hmm. Can you describe a little bit about like how that came about and how you actually describe that when you're bringing on new owners?
Yeah, it started over a joke I had with a homeowner that I told him if he was a jerk again, I was going to fire him. And we had a pretty good relationship, but he could be a little snarky to my team, and it was inappropriate. So I was like, hey, you jerk one more time and you're out here. Him and I laughed about it, and it seemed to settle the problem. And so I wrote it into the contracts, a little bit tongue in cheek, but it's enforceable. I've used it. So when we get to that, we're going through, hey, here's the commission, here's the fees we charge, here's what happens, here's the notification, and here's the no jerks policy. And starting off with that at the beginning of the relationship builds a relationship with expectations of how we're going to treat each other. So like I say, I know you would never do this, but let me just walk through this with you. And we have homeowners calling like, now I'm not being a jerk, but I need to talk to you. I was like, of course you can talk to us. Let's have candid conversations, but let's not be rude to each other. It also works well because I put that into my employment contracts. And it's in many of our markets, it's actually in our guest rental contracts too. So from three sides, I'm expecting people not to be jerks to each other, because at the end of the day, there's going to be things that go wrong. We all need to put goodwill into it. People are a soft science, and getting mean with each other quickly is exactly the wrong way to build a sustainable and lasting business.
Do you think it actually does help avoid some of those interactions potentially, because they know that they've gone through that, they've signed that, you've tongue in cheekly, talked about it? Do you think they softens them a little bit the next time they maybe would get a little bit testy?
I think it does. I think there's a portion of the portfolio that no matter what we told them at the beginning, they're going to be jerks. They're just built for it. We call them HMOs, high maintenance owners. Sometimes we make people into HMOs, by what we've done. But the truth is, on one side of it, it's setting up the expectations of how you're going to talk to my team. On another portion of how that plays well, my team knows what to expect from the homeowners and what my expectations are and what I'll stand for. And I've fired homeowners. I've used the clause. I've actually referenced the no jerks clause. I'm like, you're a jerk. You've talked to my team. I gave you a warning, and there's been a couple times I haven't given a warning, but like, I will fire you because if my team doesn't believe me when I tell them I'll back them, when somebody has gone, when somebody's disrespected them, then they're never going to have the safety they need to be able to make good decisions in the business. And it's critical to them and to me, and it's something for us to point to. It's also a way for them to hold me accountable, right? Hey, he was a jerk. You've written it down. You said it. Are you going to live up to what you said and what you hold yourself to? And, the best way to build a culture is to say it to other people. If you hide those sort of ideologies, we talk about like in the office, but we're not saying it out publicly. It doesn't really, that culture goes away. So the culture of we're all going to respect each other, is in writing and enforceable and holds each other accountable. Because at the end of the day, your you're making sure that things that you're writing down are not just for your team, but they're also for you to hold yourself accountable to, because you're a human as well. So having those no jerk policies is a line in the sand for all of us.
Brilliantly said. Love
Yeah.
it.
I think what I like about it best, honestly, is just this idea of determine your success and happiness, because we've gone at length on the previous episodes, Steve, about this idea of, and Brooke has mentioned this a few times too, sometimes, unfortunately, your biggest owner can be the one that actually is the jerk. And so you really, really, really want to keep that relationship active. It could be a $200,000 a year property, or they could own 5 properties, right? They could collectively be generating $1 million a year in gross booking revenue. And those are the ones that sometimes can, get you, because they feel like they know they got you. They're so reliant on their revenue and their income,
I mean, from a frustration point, you may put up with a homeowner who's difficult you may put up more difficulties from them because they're a higher value property you might have, right? But there has to be a point where you say, I can put up with all this, but what I won't put up with is disrespect for my team, for myself, for our lives. I have this great chart that I made called the crazy owner to homeowner to property income chart of exactly
Is that a play
where
on Crazy Hot? Is that a play on Crazy Hot chart? Is that what you're referencing?
it is. It's exactly a play on it, and I've got it all written out. But we joke around about it. But the truth is, yes, frustration levels. You may have a higher tolerance to frustration levels with the homeowner based on the value of the property. But at the end of the day, there are there are line items that you have to just say that's absolutely a non-starter for us.
Mhm. Yeah. My experience too has been that sometimes your demanding clients who are not jerks can teach you a lot, because they'll actually push you a little bit, or they'll improve your service, or they'll go, you know what? No one's actually ever said that to me. I didn't know you wanted that level of detail on the reporting. I didn't know you wanted that thing. So when you tell me to, and I can do it, and then I go modify my system to allow, me to deliver that to you, you're a lot happier. And so I've learned a lot from my demanding clients. Early in my career, I would get a little stressed or a little anxious for certain people. Now I think, what is it, when I listen to them, can I learn something from this that I can then go apply to people who don't say anything but might actually benefit from what this person is suggesting? I felt that way before recently.
But do it in a respectful way. Right?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Again, going back to the no jerk. You can be demanding, but just don't be a jerk about it.
Exactly.
Excellence is meeting the expectations of your most demanding clients when reasonable. And when you're hitting that level and you're applying that across the board, you're finding excellence.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Awesome. So number 4, going in a slightly different direction. You kind of mentioned this almost in the intro, I would argue a little bit, Steve, talking about being local in the market and stuff like that. So number 4 on your list was you can only be local in one place. So when you kind of did that first expansion way back when, you duplicated a previous approach, but the trouble was maybe it didn't work quite in the same way when you went to that new market compared to the first one. So talk about this, because I think this is kind of like your whole business model now is kind of based on this thesis. But yeah, what's the thought process here?
Yeah. So I was, I came into the business at 28 years old. I'm full of bravado. I had moved up through the entire organization, working in the local, every single, every single position in the company. I end up having the biggest competitor in town leave in the middle of the night with everybody's money. I come in, step in, and we immediately grow to hundreds of units. Go through the entire process. We become the leading property management company in Puerto Penasco by a magnitude of 6 or 7 times over. And I think I'm pretty smart. And I build systems. I take cues from the special operations community, apply them to property management. Documents. Nobody else had documents. We had software. It was cool. Nobody else had software. Putting all these things in place, like, man, I'm just so smart, and I'm going to go rubber stamp this thing everywhere. And so I go to San Carlos, Mexico, and I'm like, rubber stamp. And man, I got punched in the face. I got punched in the face a couple times, and I'm like, wait, hold on, wait, what I'm doing isn't working over here, right? And the truth was, you have to know the local market. Every market has its own culture, has its own expectations. You have to understand what's going on in that market, who the players are, how you need to be speaking to them, how you need to be operating, and who you need to appease and who you need to stay away from. If you aren't local and you don't understand what's going on in the market on a day-to-day basis, you're never going to find the success that you're going to have by being far away from it and not being local. And it comes down to the same, if you look at all the successful service companies that have scaled, they all have local ownership. Whether it's in maintenance franchises, or if you're looking at like Remax, or residential real estate, they have to have local ownership. Someone who actually cares and is down there and doing the work, and has an incentive that's incentivized to make sure that they're finding success, with those homeowners. If you don't have somebody who's vested speaking to your homeowners, who's going to be a stable force over the course of years and decades, you're never going to find success in building a lasting relationship with the community as a whole, your homeowners individually, or the market, or be accepted by the market, because you're always just going to be a corporate, suit, instead of the the guy or gal that's the owner, making it happen day to day, that's responsible to their own community.
Yeah, I mean, that's so well said. I mean, the only thing I can add to that is I remember when I launched Vantage, it was probably maybe 2 years in. I mean, we didn't have a ton of properties. I mean, we weren't even probably like a top 5 company in our own market. And I was already ready to expand up the Jersey Shore. And I remember going up there and, trying to do it. And what ended up happening is they both kind of failed. You know what I mean? Like our expansion into Jersey failed because I wasn't up there. And then, but I would try to go up there and fix it, and then I was taking away from my core business, my bread and butter business down in Ocean City, Maryland. And they both ended up really getting hurt. Where I should have done is got it to that critical mass, got it to the where it was like, call it like top 1 or top 2 in the market, and then hired a GM, nurtured them, developed them, you know what I mean? And then I could have, and only at that point could have thought about possibly going and expanding, into that next market. And like I said, it ended up penalizing both markets doing it that way.
Growing into multiple markets in which you own and are not fully scaled isn't twice as hard per market, is quadratically harder. It's 4 times as hard. So if I go into one market and think, well, I'm growing, have I really taken off yet? Do I have somebody who runs this autonomously, where I've got minimal management requirements daily? I'm not there yet, but I'm going to go start another market because I see opportunity there, right? And you're not thinking like, okay, it'll just be twice as hard, I can get away with that. Nope, it's 4 times as hard and that's every single time you open a new market that you're responsible for. So, just keep multiplying the hardness times 4 each time, and that's how much more difficult it gets. And that's why you see a lot of companies who try to grow into large, an extraordinary amount of markets and coverage and operate it corporately fail. It's not because they're bad property managers. It's because they've taken on a business model that becomes quadratically more difficult with every new market.
Yeah. We see it time and time again.
Yeah.
The story I always feel like, Steve, is that, like to Brooks' example from a minute ago, when he was in Ocean City, he's waking up every day and he's figured out, how can I make it better? How can I get more homeowners? How can I keep my guests happy? How can I, and that was like his motivation, his mission every single day to get that done. When he goes to Ocean City or up to New Jersey, that side of it, it's like, there's someone in that market who wakes up every day and thinks, how can I get all the inventory? How can I do it?
Yeah.
And so you're only going to be able to dedicate maybe 1/10 of your time, or a quarter of your time, or half your time. So I think you're right, Steve, because it's like you're putting in half the effort or a quarter of the effort, but you're expecting a similar outcome. It's like, that's not often the case that you could do that. I mean, maybe every once in a while you find a market that's very soft, or the operators that are very weak and sluggish, but that's not super common. Like if there's competition, there's probably someone good there,
I mean, you're traveling. The travel time takes to go back and forth is eating up your time. Well, how much time are you getting with your family? Now that's starting to suffer. Your personal life is starting to suffer. And the truth is, when I'm in the office, and when any of us are in the office, people that aren't having conversations with us, we're picking up all this information going around us. That just is impossible to happen if you're not in your own office with your own crew, listening to your own problems, on a day in, day out basis. The absence of leadership is, compounded.
Yeah, right on. Well, yeah, you mentioned there a second ago, Steve, maybe that's the next one, number 5, to kind of jump off of there, talking about self-care and like your own relationship, maybe with yourself, your own health, and then perhaps with your family is kind of part of this process as well. So number 5 in the list was self-care is critical to the health of the business. Maybe talk through that a little bit, of kind of your approach today and how you find that work-life balance, so to speak.
The truth is, putting time in to your work at the expense of your health is a losing proposition. So we all are motivated to make things happen, to build a life. I think culture pushes us to, show that we have value through our success in business, or, the relationships we have with our homeowners and guests and our team. But if you're doing it to a point where you're not taking care of yourself, then how much value are you really, extracting out of this? So, you're sharper when you're taking care of yourself. You're a better leader when you're taking care of yourself. You've got more energy when you're taking care of yourself. All of those are great, but also if you're working so hard that you're shortening your life, that you're ruining your relationships at home, that you're not taking care of, of reinvesting into yourself, the business proposition is unsustainable. And if you're key to this business, why would you destroy one of your best assets, by running it too hard? If I have a car that I'm driving too fast and it overheats and it blows up, well, I've lost the value of that car. And overheating yourself is one of those things that, many of us are prone to do. And it just doesn't make sense that over the business, destroying your health and not taking care of yourself long term is it makes any sense. And it's something I was doing when I was younger. I'd put on a lot of weight. I mean, I've got pictures of me, 50 pounds heavier than I am right now. And it was why? Because I ate whatever was in front of me and worked from from the time I got up till the time I went to bed. It's cost me relationships. It's cost me, time with family. It wasn't worth it. So getting back to balance, you actually find you grow faster and more sustainably.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm on this one. I'm just writing down notes right now, Steve. So, you're saying 50 pounds more. So you looked a lot like me. And no, but in all seriousness, this is one of those ones where I'm just as guilty, and I unfortunately I haven't really fixed it yet. I haven't solved it yet. I always feel like I'll do it after this next milestone. Like I set some goal, and whatever happens to be, like, all right, I'll start eating healthier. I'll start working out more when I do this. When I get to when I can hire that next person, that takes some of the stress off. But unfortunately, it just keeps on kicking the can. So I'll hold myself accountable here and
Well,
report back.
first of all, I've never been as good looking as you, Brooke. So even in my best, so we'll just put that to the side. What I've been doing, which has been helping me, um, is I've stopped taking appointments before 9 a.m. So I'm getting up at 6:30, and that's set aside. And it was hard, and I've had to say no, and I've had to put boundaries on it. But does that mean I'm getting everything done for myself? Not necessarily, but I'm getting up. I've got a routine, or I'm getting a workout in. I'm getting, and they're not heavy workouts. But I'm getting, I'm moving. I'm either swimming or doing a run. I'm doing some cold plunging. I'm taking my vitamins. I'm taking, all the different things, and over time, that's changed my mindset to think of, what else is happening. It's the starter that gets everything going. So that's what I'm doing.
I like that actually, and I actually did something similar. So I read some kind of post from Tim Ferriss, and he talked about like finding out like where your green zones are, where you are at your best. And for me, it's the same thing. It's that early morning. I wake up between 4 and 5 every morning, and I love that window from like 4 to call it like 10, where I can actually like get stuff done. Like where because usually from 10 to 6, I'm on nonstop back to back Zooms or meetings or whatever. And this is my time. Like and when I say my time, it doesn't necessarily mean it's like time necessarily to work out or whatever, but it's just the time to work on the things that I want to work on.
Yeah.
And things that are mission critical, the what I call like the big rocks. And so I've done that, actually, that strategy. And I do, try to go out for a walk for at least, an hour in the morning, and, or go for a swim and at least kind of exercise a little bit and kind of get out into the world. So I'm not just sitting in my chair all day long. But that actually was a really instrumental thing for me in my wellness, just to be able to just knock out some of the things that I do want to actually focus on,
Brooke, something that you do really well that I'm going to applaud you on, and self-care isn't just physical care. It's taking care of your soul, whatever your belief system is, but feeding that, taking care of your mind, taking care of your social environment. And Brooke, I think something that you do really well is I've seen you put time aside for your family, for your wife and for your daughters and stuff like that. And I think that that's part of this. When we think of self care, taking care of our family and our social environment and our support system, giving back to them is self care. Because I'll tell you, boy, when you lose that because you haven't taken care of it, you want to talk about a place where you have to do a lot of recovery from, right? And I think that that's a hyper important part of self care. And I think you do a really good job of that, Brooke.
Well, appreciate that. I learned because I lived in a suitcase for 10 years, so I missed a lot of that time. So it's you, like you said, you appreciate it a little bit more when you don't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the phrase that helped me, Brooke, just speaking personally, I can only speak to what motivated me to get a little bit better on this kind of stuff, is just saying out loud that it was in my control. I think I would often blame other people. Oh, it's like to Steve's point about taking a call before a certain time. Well, a client called me. It's not my fault that I can't go to the gym today. I had a project pop up or I have a meeting that I'm not ready for and stuff like that. So when I verbalize saying like it's in my control to do those things, whether it's a diet or an exercise or other things, to your point, Steve, like the golf. I mean, you joked about it, Brooke, but like I really look forward to that. Like I look forward to like zipping my phone away, for 4 hours and not looking at it and not worrying about it. And whatever, there's always things that pop up when I'm, doing that. But in my head, I'm like, I feel better now. I feel like I can attack it and get back to it. So that was helpful for me, just saying out loud, like this is in my control. I can design it, in a way that I can control it and get around what I can get around. And I find some days I work out, I get more done that day, honestly, even though I worked less, so to speak, from a time perspective. So
I love that, Conrad. Something I always I always say is I'm the only one in control of what goes in my pie hole. So I'm the only one I'm the only one who makes a decision of what I'm going to eat. And making sure that you remembering who's actually in control of it. Doesn't matter who put food in front of you. I'm the only one who's in control of what's going in my mouth. So.
Yeah. And in theory, what goes out of your mouth too when we're talking, but that's
that's a great one. Yeah, exactly. Right. Boy, isn't that the truth?
Yeah, that's all good. Awesome. We'll skip along that. I think that's a good one though to spend some time on. Number 6 is talking a little bit more, switching gears a little bit on this one, honestly, Steve. Operational excellence. So operational excellence is vital, but hospitality unlocks brand love. There's some words in there. Maybe break that apart for me. What do you mean by kind of the operational excellence side of it? And then what does hospitality mean to you? I know we've talked about this before, but I'm curious kind of your current take on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think in the early days, for the first decade of being in the business, I viewed this as a logistics business. I can clean better than my competition. I can book better than my competition. I can invoice better than my competition and pay faster and do better descriptions than my competition on my statements. And so I was seeing this as very much as I used to call it clockwork property management, right? So how was I going to make this thing run like clockwork, right? Where was my business perfect cycle? Where was my perfect business cycle, and how closely could I keep it to that perfect business cycle on a regular basis? But at the time, there wasn't a lot of automation. I was always, in fact, part of the Streamline initiative was how much could we, automate and keep human error from happening in this clockwork, property management. And we still had a lot of interaction with guests. They would call us on the phone. They would check in and get keys and this sort of stuff. And so there was built-in hospitality and relationships that happened. Well, the industry and technology had taken this to a place where it became, clockwork property management to the point it became sterile. And so, the perfect business cycle often today for many property managers is a business cycle in which you never actually meet anybody. They show up to a door, they punch in a code, the apps worked, the links worked, it opens up, the place is clean, there's no problems with the property. They leave, they get an automated survey saying that, everything was great, fantastic. Okay, what's next? Here's a review. Great. Here's now it goes into a cycle, or excuse me, goes into a database, and now they get emails from us, on this drip campaign where they book again. We don't know who they are, and so we've lost our ability to build brand. Everybody's like, "Oh, do you manage Airbnbs?" It's like, no, I manage Casagos, and I manage vacation rentals. I manage people's homes and and experiences. And so getting back to what's the hospitality of allowing people to be seen, heard, loved, that they're not just reservation 1572, you know, they're John and Jane, and they're from Prescott, Arizona, and we're going to recognize them as humans and people before they arrive. We're going to call them and have a conversation with them. We're going to find out why they're coming. We're going to write a handwritten note. A handwritten note is the same emotional value as a $25 well chosen gift. For what, 3 cents and a little bit of time with their name on it, something specific to them, where they're from, and we're glad they're there, and maybe a reference if this is our second or third time of coming to staying with us. Making people feel valued and seen is the new luxury. And the truth is, a lot of Casago properties aren't luxury properties. They're bread and butter properties. They're mid-level, condos on the beach that aren't luxury properties. They're good properties. We're not running slums, but these are good, solid properties that aren't luxury properties. People that aren't in the luxury segment or can't afford that aren't used to being seen. And when you start to provide hospitality and care and conversation about them as individuals, you can provide them a luxury that they don't normally get in their day-to-days. And that's how you get them to love the brand. And it's also how you get to earn the right to fail when there is a failure. When I've called somebody, when me and my team have called somebody and talked to them before they arrive, found out where they're coming down, maybe we put a note in there like, gosh, we're so glad you're coming. You have a great time on your anniversary. I know it was a long drive from, Albuquerque, New Mexico to here, and you sign it. They show up, and on day 2, something happens with the property. They're not calling Casago, this nameless website of like, why did this break down on my second day? They're calling up the person that sent them a person like, hey, had this water leak starting to happen right now. Can you get over and help us? Yeah, absolutely. Let me figure out what's going on. Turn it off. I'm going to come right over. What can I do for you? Suddenly you've earned the right to fail. And that's how you build brand loyalty. And now, our teammate showed up and fixed it for him. And now it's another personal interaction in which we actually help them as humans. And so that's how you unlock the real value of what your company is. Otherwise, you're just a logistics brand.
Steve, you should do this professionally, man. That was perfect. Like, if you should do this as a career. If you're a pilot, doesn't work out, But no, like it's like you're so cerebral. I actually wrote down kind of the Japanese, the yin and yang sign, what you were saying that. And to me, that's it, right? You have the operations is the yin, and the yang is that hospitality and the soul of the company is what you just talked about. And I've also wrote down, I love this quote. It's like, you can now earn the right to fail. That is so good. That's awesome.
Thanks.
I've always thought of it, Steve, kind of like the needle is in the middle when they book the property. Like, they don't know what to expect. They want it to go well. They realize it may not go well. Maybe they've stayed before. And when something bad happens, it's like that needle just edges into the negative if they've never talked to you or they have no connection with you. But by what you're describing, like, you reach out, you have a conversation, you chat with them. It's like the needle's a little bit more in the green already. And then if something bad happens, it might go back to middle, but it usually doesn't go all the way back to like this negative thing. Whereas if they haven't heard from you or seen anything about you, like you said, you're just this, I've used the word soulless lately, Steve. I don't know what you think of that word, but like, a lot of companies, I think, just operate very soullessly. You just don't know anything about it. It's just a front, or like you said, it's an Airbnb. Like, there's nothing to it. And I think these great operators are not like that at all. So
I mean, soulless is a great word. When you show up and it's just a website that's booked a property, you don't care, and you can never be loyal to that. People are loyal to people, not to brands. They're loyal to the experience and how you make them feel. And today's luxury is being seen.
Exactly. Well, number 7 then I think kind of extends on this a little bit, so we'll head that direction. But it's really about principles. So number 7 that you contributed was communicated and practice principles can transform chaos into cohesion. So, in your paragraph, you talk about how do you let people operate with the company vision as you get bigger? When you're a small team, you can tell everybody they're working with directly every day, but now the company is significantly larger. How do you make sure that people operate in the way that you want them to operate, or you feel like holds up the brand standards for Casago? So maybe talk through that, how you've scaled, how you've tried to instill those values into people.
Yeah, my leadership experience before coming to Casago was running small units of special operators and leading them, and so leading 8 men that are highly motivated in which you have a very structured environment of who's in charge and who gets to say what to do, is a much different environment or ecosystem than trying to run hundreds of people in which they're not, they may or may not be so motivated. They're motivated by the economics often, and you have varying degrees of people who are, highly bought in to those who are just here to make sure they get their paycheck. And it's very difficult to operate in those environments. And what had happened was I had ran Casago with a small team, and then suddenly I'd mentioned that my competitors had left town, and the company just blew up. It was just growing like crazy. And for the first time in my life, I had people who were walking in the door and getting behind the desk, and I didn't know their name. I'm like, "Who's that?" "Oh, his name's Jesus." "Jesus, nice to meet you. Like, when did you get hired?" He's like, "I've been here for 7 days." Like, "Oh my God, you've been here for 7 days? I don't know who you are? It's nuts." And it was just right about that time I had a homeowner come in and just light me up one side, down the other, and tell me what we had done. I was like, "No, there's got to be a mistake. Maybe it's a language barrier or something. Something's wrong." "Nope, this is what happened." And like, "Okay, Mona, let me get back to you. Let me find out what happened. I can't believe it. I hear you. I know. I got you. I'm gonna get back to you. And whatever I find out, I'm gonna tell you the truth. That's what. I'm gonna figure this out." And so I went to this teammate she'd had a conversation with, and they're, "Yeah, that's exactly what I did." Like, what? Why? It's like, "I told her." Like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." She's like, they're like, "I'm protecting the company." It's like, "No, you're no, 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 no." And this thing started really getting away from me. And I remember going down and sitting on the beach and with a 6 pack of beer by myself and thinking like, this thing is about to like collapse on itself. And I am not qualified to run this. What am I doing? Why can't I run this? What have I seen in the past? And I sat down and I started thinking about what I wanted Costco to look like and the rules that would go along with that, and the thought processes of like, how do I want people to think about these things? And what I didn't know at the time is what I was writing down principles, because principles are nothing more than rules that we use to guide ourselves to honor the values to honor the values that we have. And so I started writing down all these principles, like, I am the owner's advocate. I'll make all decisions based on the owner's best interest. The guest, the renter is my guests. I'll treat them with genuine hospitality. They're away from home and look to me to be safe and cared for when they're here with us. And I started writing down all of these principles. And I put them into a little piece of paper. And I started passing it out. And when I finally got it out to people, people thought I remember my GM looking at me like, "This is the stupidest idea you've had yet." I was like, "Just try it." And about 3 months later, she goes, I come in, sit down on her couch in her office. She goes, "It's working." I go, "What's working?" And she goes, "Your stupid credo thing." And I'm like, "Really?" I was like, why? Why are you saying that?" And she said, "Well, I was walking down the stairs and they didn't see me coming at the front desk, and they were talking about what to do. And they were talking about the credo, and they were making their decisions off of one of the sentences, trying to honor that one principle. It gave them a guide to have a conversation. And then she's like, then literally the same day, like as somebody had planned it, I went to the housekeeping meeting, had about 60 housekeepers there, and they opened up the book on their own after the meeting and were talking about how they care for the properties and what they should be doing when an owner asks this question. She goes, "It's working." And so when you take these principles, put them into place, you make sure that that you're talking about them every single day. You have to live them yourself. You have to make sure that this is part of the culture. It's not something you hang on a wall. And you guide people by it. Eventually, they go from what I would consider, from compliance to conviction, right? And so when they start to see that the principles are working and that you're going to honor them yourself, and you're going to live by them as well, and that you're going to make sure that the company runs in this direction, you start to end up in a place where these principles are enforced in the absence of leadership. and that becomes your social norms because the members of the company themselves are enforcing it through the cultural norms, and that's nothing more than culture. And so, creating culture of how you being intentional about how you're creating the culture of your company by speaking to and enforcing your principles and values on a daily basis brings your company together where you start to get a a herd of cats turned into a team of horses that are all pulling the same direction. And that's where these principles get into place. And that's truly the reason why I'm sitting here talking with you today, while there's literally probably anywhere from 10 to 20,000 decisions being made today in the name of Casago, with the faith that we can all have a conversation about what the best decisions are based on those principles.
And your phone hasn't rung once, right? It's all getting handled. It's all been taken
Yeah.
care of. That's
Yeah.
incredible. I think you used I've heard you say that quote. And then I think you mentioned Clydesdales though.
No. Yeah.
But it's so good. So I had Conrad. I had the pleasure of going to a Keystone retreats with that Steve hosted with Matt Landau. We were down in Texas, and it was incredible. And one of the exercises we did was to kind of go through there and build your principles. And look, I've been this is my fourth business. I've we've done values and principles and all this stuff before. But when he kind of told that story, it kind of like it actually clicked for me immediately. And we went through and we kind of broke out into these little teams. And I felt like I had kind of, our principles defined, but like I needed to refine them and needed to polish them up. But that just like really helped, build it. And one of our principles, and I'll share it with you here, and this was really inspired from what Steve just said. It says, we trust and empower our team to make independent decisions based on our core values and principles and support them even if they're wrong. And that was so critical from the takeaway from that retreat. And we have an exercise. We have an all hands every 2 weeks, and we read all of our principles, and then we give kudos and shout outs to team members. But we always tie it back to one of those core principles. And it's amazing how that reinforcement mechanism really works by you do that. I mean, everyone on my team could recite our principles now, and they love that part of it. That's one of those parts of the all hands and one of the parts of the business that they never want to miss. And I just think it's a good way to reinforce it. But Steve, thank you for helping me flush those out. And this, like I said, is one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, Brooke, I watched the way you lead your company, and you followed the 3 Ps of it really well. I see what you practice. I see what you promote, within your company, and I see what you permit. I've seen you let people go that weren't fitting in, and those are the 3 things that really end up building your culture, and you do all 3 of those really well.
Thank you.
Awesome. I love it. Well, going in a different direction then here, Steve, less on the culture side, more on the tech side of things. Number 8 on your list was technology should make us bionic. I like this, but obviously you have some experience with software, and there's a huge software component, I think, to your career and your Casago story. But yeah, what do you mean by bionic? Define that for me.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of goes back to the original story of talking about how business cycles have become the perfect business cycle, and short-term rentals has become sterile. And so that's really made us robotic, right? Like there is no touch, there is no, interpersonal communication with it. So bionic, are we able to operate the portions of the business that don't need interaction and are prone to failure through human error in a more efficient way that makes us more profitable, less overhead, makes us better, it creates a better experience through excellence of not just making the mistakes that happen often with these scheduling or missing a reservation check-in or something like that. Those are the sort of things that make us bionic, by nature. But we got to make sure that we don't take it so far to the point where we just don't get to have real communication and real interactions with our guests and owners and teammates, because at the end of the day, this is a relationship business. This is a tech-enabled play, but this is not a tech play. This is a people play. This is a service of people, and this is a recognition of people. This is an experience play where people are coming in, and it might be the baby's first time to the beach and grandma's last time at the beach. Don't screw it up. And that's our responsibility as we go into this, making sure that people who are relying on us to build experiences and memories with their families and friends um, are not having a bad experience because we didn't do it well. Making technology work for us in a way that makes us bionic, so we're not making those mistakes, is highest and best use, for that. But putting it to a place where they're not seen is the diseconomies of efficiency when it comes to, and scale when it comes to our business.
I think, Steve, wasn't your original quote, because I don't know if we had to consolidate this down to meet, the character limit in LinkedIn, but I felt like it was something to the effect of, it should make us bionic, not robotic, right?
Yeah.
Something to that effect. And I was envision, for me, technology is like, I think of like Tony Stark, giving Tony Stark the Iron Man suit. Tony Stark is still underneath there, right? But it's amplifying him and making him so much better, so much more productive.
I might be a little bit older than you. I always think of Steve Austin, the $6 million man.
Which is now worth what? That's probably like the $600 million man.
Probably be like the $2 billion guy.
Yeah, inflation will get you. I remember you said that one a while ago to me, Steve, in a different show that we did together. Baby's First, Grandma's Last. I loved it. The one we added in later, and we talked about it later, was the only 72 hours or the only 96 hours that someone gets away from work all year. So
Yeah.
I think it's particularly true in a lot of communities, like, here in the Myrtle Beach area. People come here, it's the only vacation they're going to take all year. They go at home and they do hard manual labor, and this is the only time they get to like put their feet in the sand. They get a few days off. That's it. And I thought that was another way to describe what that feels like, because that's more, that's like everybody. If you're hosting 100 guests, a lot of them are in that bucket for sure.
That's a great way of thinking about it. And I don't know if you've ever, I'm trying to think of the gentleman's name. Brooks seems to remember, it's everybody named really well, but the guy who does the big calendar in which you fill out every year. Anyways, the point of this is, to your point, Conrad, if we're getting to see our parents one time a year, maybe for 4 or 5 days, we may only have 20 or 30 days with our parents for the rest of our life, right? If that's the only time we're getting to see them, right? And when you're only getting to see them on a very, limited basis, if someone only had 20 days with their parents, do you really want to screw up a week of that? Making sure that we're holding that responsibility serious is part of our, part of our charter.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Well, I know we got a few left here, Steve, and I want to be respectful of your time because you've been generous with us today. Number 9 is embracing a beginner's mindset. So going through and exploring new ideas without concern for how other people are judging us, and maybe taking previous thoughts that we have into it, and taking these experiences in. So how do you approach that today? I mean, you've accomplished so much, you've grown the company so much. How do you constantly learn new things and come in with a blank slate, so to speak, or a beginner's mindset to learn those new things that have helped grow your business further?
When we when we first started franchising, we had a lot of property managers that signed up with faith that we could help them. And when they would ask questions, if I didn't know the answer, or if they said something I didn't know, I was embarrassed to ask them, or I felt like I had to know, and if I didn't know, I almost felt like shame or trying to hide it. And what I found is, when I finally got rid of that ego and put it away, or that expectation of like, yes, I am an experienced property manager, I do have value, there are things I can help with, but I don't know everything, and there's a lot of new things I don't know. I started growing again, and it's been wonderful. And I just recently had this great conversation with one of our new partners who's only been in the business for 4 or 5 years. That guy taught me so much in a 20-minute conversation, a blind spot that I probably had for 20 years that he opened up my eyes to. And I think that's part of the beginner's mindset, being humble, understanding that, being confident in your value, but also understanding that you're not you're not all-knowing, you're not omnipotent when it comes to the experiences. So be humble, be kind, be honest, and learn as you go.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. So number 10, I think it's kind of, we've touched on this already. I feel like that's a fair statement. But maybe there's another layer you want to add in here, talking about all the things we've talked about so far today, right? Values, getting your team kind of on the same page. Number 10 on your list, Steve, was having hard conversations for your teammates' sake, excuse me. So I think we all sometimes do this. We don't want to in college, I remember we read this book called Eat the Frog. I don't know if you've read that book, Steve, but it's
Yeah.
kind of this idea of like, we tend to do the easy things that we want to do that are, we feel like we can nail, and we ignore the things that are like, we know they're there, but really don't want to talk about them. How do you do that? How do you approach that today, in your own business, where you have a hard conversation or eat a frog, so to speak, even when you don't want to?
I think you guys start thinking about, like, first of all, it's unkind to them and unkind to the rest of your team not to address it immediately, right? So your team's going through the pain if somebody's not operating at the level they need to be. They know they're failing. Look, everybody who's failing has in the back of their mind that they're not getting their job done. And it sucks to be in a place where you're not up to speed, or you're not, in the right role. And just pulling the Band-Aid off is kind to them, is kind to your team, is kind to the people who are relying on their jobs, who are watching their jobs being diminished by, a low performer. Having those conversations up front are important. And also, quickly, a story that I have on this was, I had a woman who was working for me. She was kind and good, and a good human being, but she was failing, and I didn't let her go. And over time, I ended up becoming the bad guy, because when I finally did let her go, I was frustrated with her. I wasn't leading her well. And the truth was, like, I probably wasn't as kind to her as I needed to be, because I was frustrated as heck with her. So making sure that you let them go while you can still be kind to them on a daily basis, while you can still lead them and have goodwill towards them, and getting them into a place where they are successful and feeling good about what they do, is the kind of thing you do for them, yourself, and your teammates.
Yeah, I think it's uncomfortably hard for everybody to do that, and I've learned over time that you are doing them actually a disservice by not doing that. And you think you're making it better for them, but you're actually, you need to sometimes just have that candid conversation and get to it, because otherwise they may not even know.
You're hurting their future career that they're going to be great at by taking time away from it, by allowing them to be in this role.
Well, Brooke, I think I got one more question for Mr. Schwab before we let him depart for today, but this has been a good one, as I expected.
I do, yeah. So, Steve, if you go back in time to your 25-year-old self and give a little bit of advice, what would it be?
Go find Brooke Fouts and meet him right away.
I like that.
One that right there.
Yeah, that's a simple one. Well, awesome. Again, Steve, we really thank you for hopping on. I mean, we super appreciate it. I know we went.
No. We got to hear his real answer. Come on.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was good to let it go at that. I would probably tell you, don't take things so seriously. There were so many things that, looking back on it, were really small, inconsequential things that I thought were going to be such a big deal, and I cared so much about. And I look back, I'm like, it didn't matter, and I put so much time and energy and self-worth into these things, proving other people wrong, or taking these small things way too seriously. Letting those go would have been the best thing I could have done for my future self. So that's what I would say.
I like that. I like the real one. The fake one's good, but I like the real one too. That's good. Awesome. No, but on a serious note, though, I did enjoy this one, Steve, and this was awesome. If you made it all the way to the end, then we got a request for you. If you got value out of Steve's episode, we need more reviews. We're hoping to get more reviews of all the listeners out there. We know a lot more people listen than leave reviews, because I have access to a brain and eyeballs. So if you made it all the way to the end, we really appreciate it. Thanks, Steve, for hopping on. We'll put some links in the show notes to Casago, everything Steve's doing on LinkedIn. That's a good way for you to perhaps check him out and see if he could potentially help your business. But we thank you for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks so much.